Well, I've had such a long day here with a lot of commentary back and forth in other particular threads about this particular subject that I had that it requires a part two. And part one, of course, was about modern women getting replaced by robots in the future. And some of the comments I got back in other threads in this regard were about the price point. So that's what I'm going to talk about here. And an AI robot woman, the thing that seemingly strikes out the most is that men are telling me that it's going to be worth the investment no matter what the price point is, because of how if you get in a marriage with a real woman and you get a divorce, they take half of your stuff, they get alimony and things like that. And some of the comments I got on that were that $100,000 for that benefit is worth every penny. And that may actually be true, but the reason why I say that $100,000 is too high of a price point on that is that most regular, normal men really can't afford that kind of money on that kind of an investment. And if you're like me and you don't make $100,000 a year, I live enough to live comfortably on my own, but that kind of a price point is just too steep, even if I was interested, and I'm not. But I did mention that in the rest of those conversations that if the price point gets down to, say, $30,000, the threat to real women becomes very, very real. Because at $30,000, you're talking about maybe a second car payment is what that amounts to in the end. And if the technology, or should I say, when the technology reaches that point, it's game over for women. And if what I mentioned in my part one, that if these robots gain womb capabilities, for example, and children can be birthed out of these in a test tube type of environment, which, if you ask me, I'm not sure how much advance in technology it's going to take to get to the point where a robot could give birth to a live human being. That said, I'm not ruling it out. It is definitely possible. And so this whole thing is just dystopian. It's ridiculous, but unfortunately, it's a frightening threat. Especially to modern women, because if they get replaced by these, the game is entirely up for them. They will, there's also a a study a while back saying that by the year 2030, which is only 5 years from now, that 45% of women of childbearing age will be both single and childless. If my prediction on this one comes true, and these robots become technologically and economically viable, that 45% number is going to look like it's going to be well short of reality. The number of women who are single and childless with this into the picture, I'm going to guess probably gets closer to 70 or 75%. By which point they would have already needed to have been either married or found a long-term relationship before this occurs. Because once it does, and it reaches an economic price point that men can afford, the game is up. Men are not going to seek actual real women anymore at all. And I think it's a tragedy and a shame. But unfortunately, the current culture of women have largely done this to themselves. And they don't see the threat coming, but I do. So this was just about the price point again, most men, your typical men, the men who can afford this $100,000 price point, who are popping up in some of my comment sections, I believe are the Chads and Tyrones of the world. Those men don't even need this because they can actually pick up real women because they're in that top 10% as it is that 80% of women pursue. So if they don't want a robot woman, they can have a real one. But I'm looking at the men that are not in that top 10 or 15% and are just, normal, your normal 5s and 6s such as myself. And again, my biblical faith would prevent me from ever engaging in this kind of behavior, but I would not blame the men who do. So anyhow, that's part 2 of this subject. I just wanted to talk about the price points a little bit because it seemingly comes up in a lot of the comments and some of the threads I've been involved in. And I just wanted to kind of top that all off tonight. Put a little cherry on the subject and get ready for tomorrow. Tomorrow's Saturday will be Saturday night's edition of End the Simpademic. And please come back, share your comments, and let me know if I've clarified this enough for you. Appreciate the feedback. We will see you tomorrow. Peace out, homies.